What up, Bugles? I want to welcome you to this video and to our Comics Bugle channel, your go-to spot for everything omnibus and oversized. Today we are taking a look to a true legend of comic book business and one of Cueto's most favorite comic book persona, Todd McFarlane. Todd McFarlane's journey to comic book superstardom is the stuff of industry legend, a story of talent, rebellion, innovation, and relentless ambition. Born in 1961 in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, McFarlane developed an early love for comic art. He sent out hundreds of portfolio samples to editors through his youth, facing repeated rejections before landing his first professional gigs in the mid-1980s. His earliest published work came from smaller publishers like Eclipse Comics, but it was in Marvel Comics beginning in 1987 that McFarlane exploded into mainstream popularity. Assigned to the Incredible Hulk with writer Peter David, McFarlane's work began to attract serious attention. His Hulk was lanky, almost grotesque, with hyper-expressive faces and sense of motion that jumped off the page. Readers either loved it or hated it, but they noticed it. It was clear Marvel had something special on their hands. But McFarlane's true breakout came in '88 when he was given penciling duties on The Amazing Spider-Man. Paired with writer David Michelinie, McFarlane revolutionized the visual identity of Spider-Man. His sprawling spaghetti-like webs, impossibly contorted poses, and heavily detailed line work redefined the look of the character for a generation. He redesigned classic villains like the Lizard and gave life to new creation, most notably Venom, a symbiote-powered anti-hero that would become a pop culture juggernaut. Venom's debut at Amazing Spider-Man issue 300 remains one of the most iconic moments in Spider-Man history. It was a moment that elevated both the character and McFarlane's stature with the industry. By 1989, Todd McFarlane was a fan-favorite superstar with The Amazing Spider-Man regularly topping sales charts. But creatively, he was growing restless. Frustrated with editorial limitations, especially around scripting and storytelling control, he wanted more. In a rare move, Marvel gave him what he asked for. In 1990, Marvel launched a brand new title, Spider-Man. Yes, just Spider-Man. Written and drawn entirely by Todd McFarlane. This was a big deal. It was rare for an artist to be given full control over one of the company's flagship characters. The first issue, Spider-Man issue 1, sold over 2.5 million copies, setting a then record for a single issue comic book sales. This series was an instant financial hit, though critically mixed. Some praised McFarlane's bold visual style, others found his writing simplistic. But no one could deny that McFarlane had become a brand in his own right. Despite his success, McFarlane became increasingly disillusioned with Marvel's corporate structure. He wanted to own his creations, a radical concept in the industry where creators often sign away all rights to their work. In 1992, McFarlane joined forces with 6 other high-profile Marvel artists: Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, Eric Larson, Mark Silvestri, Wells Portaccio, and Jim Valentino to form Image Comics, a creator-owned publisher that would send shockwaves through the industry. Each Image founder launched their own flagship title, and for McFarlane, it was Spawn. Spawn issue 1 debuted in May 1992 and became a cultural phenomenon. The story followed Al Simons, a murdered government assassin who makes a deal with the devil and returns to Earth as a housespawn. The book blended gritty street-level action with supernatural horror and religious themes. The debut issue sold 1.7 million copies, making it the best-selling independent comic of all times at the time. More importantly, Spawn became one of the first creator-owned characters to achieve mainstream success, challenging the Marvel DC monopoly. By 1994, Spawn had been adapted into a successful toy line, an HBO animated series in development, and later even live-action movie. McFarlane was no longer just a comic book artist. He was now a businessman, a creative mogul, and a public face of artistic independence. But success came with growing pains. Critics accused Image Comics of favoring style over substance. Many Image titles, including early Spawn, were plagued by delays and inconsistent writing. McFarlane himself acknowledged he wasn't the strongest writer. By issue 16 of Spawn, he began bringing in guest writers like Alan Moore, Neil Gaiman, Frank Miller, and even Grant Morrison, and moved that added prestige and literally weight to the series. By the mid-90s, Todd McFarlane had already redrawn the boundaries of the comic book industry, but he wasn't done yet. If comics had shown him the power of visual storytelling, the next frontier would be merchandising. In 1994, frustrated with the poor quality of superhero action figures, McFarlane founded McFarlane Toys, a company that would revolutionize how collectibles were made. Most action figures at the time were designed for kids, with crude articulation and little attention to detail. McFarlane wanted more hyper detailed, realistic sculpts that respected both the characters and the fans. McFarlane Toys debuted with the figures based on Spawn, but quickly expanded to include lines for movie maniacs featuring horror icons like Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees. The Beatles, Kiss, Halo, The Walking Dead, Game of Thrones, NFL players, and many more. The impact was immediate and massive. McFarlane Toys redefined the adult collector's market, setting new standards for design and quality. Retailers like Toys R Us and later Walmart took notice, and the figures found shelf space across North America and Europe. Todd has successfully turned his name into a lifestyle brand, associated not just with comics, but with high-end pop culture memorabilia. Even now, McFarlane Toys continues to dominate the collectible space, especially after securing the DC Multiverse license in 2020. His Batman figures have become staples among toy collectors, offering affordable, hyper-detailed versions of both modern and classic designs. Ironically, the man who once rebelled against drawing Batman in the 90s was now selling millions of Batman figures under his own company. Behind the scenes, however, McFarlane's empire was beginning to show strain. In 2002, a legal battle erupted when Neil Gaiman sued him over co-created characters like Angela, Cogliostro, and medieval Spawn. Gaiman won, leading to Angela being sold to Marvel, while she became Thor's sister in a strange twist of fate. McFarlane's company also lost a separate lawsuit against former baseball player Tony Twist, whom McFarlane had named a villain after without permission, resulting in nearly $15 million judgment. These court cases were financially and reputationally damaging. At the same time, Spawn's popularity is beginning to wane and sales decline from their 90s peak. McFarlane had also mostly stepped back from drawing the comic, focusing more on writing, editing, and running his business. Many longtime fans felt the creative spark has dimmed. The comic book landscape was changing. Superheroes were conquering cinema. Marvel was reborn under new leadership, and indie comics were again gaining cultural traction. McFarlane, always ahead of the curve, began plotting his next moves. In 2008, he made a quiet but meaningful return to comics with Haunt, a supernatural action series co-created with Robert Kirkman. While not a breakout hit, it symbolized McFarlane's renewed creative curiosity and willingness to collaborate. Around the same time, McFarlane Toys was thriving, having secured license for Halo, The Walking Dead, and NBA NFL players, sectors that kept his name in mass market circulation even when he wasn't actively drawing. But it was in the 2010s and with the broader resurgence of creator-owned comics that McFarlane found a second wind. Spawn had never gone away. It continued to be published consistently, albeit at quieter volume. But McFarlane had a milestone in mind, issue 300, and this may spawn the longest running independent comic in history. To celebrate, McFarlane assembled a murderer's row of artists: Greg Capullo, Jason Shaw Alexander, Scott Snyder, J. Scott Campbell, and Harold Opeña, among others. He also returned to drawing interiors, a treat for fans who hadn't seen his full pencils in years. This wasn't just nostalgia. McFarlane had plans for the Spawn universe. In 2021, he launched King Spawn, GUNSLINGER Spawn, and the Scorched, all written by new talents under his guidance while he served as a showrunner and occasional co-writer. The strategy paid off. King Spawn issue 1 became the highest-selling new superhero comic in decades, moving over 500,000 copies, without a single Marvel or DC logo in sight. McFarlane's philosophy hadn't changed. Own your work, bet on yourself, and don't let corporate rules dictate creative output. As he often says in interviews, "They told me not to do it. I said, watch me." The contrarian ethos defined not just his early success, but also his late career resurgence. Meanwhile, the long-awaited Spawn movie reboot continued to work in development hell. Originally announced in the late 2000s, McFarlane was adamant about writing and directing it himself. Over the years, names like Jamie Foxx and Jeremy Renner became attached, and in 2018, Blumhouse Productions signed on. McFarlane's promised a dark, R-rated horror film, more The Exorcist than Avengers. But delays, rewrites, and McFarlane's lack of directing experience slowed the project. As of 2025, the film is still in the works, with McFarlane claiming a massive rewrite is completed and production expected soon. Whether it happens remains to be seen, but his tenacity is unmatched. Todd McFarlane's career defies easy categorization. He's been a superstar artist, a controversial writer, a toy industry mogul, a rebel publisher, and an outspoken creative entrepreneur. But at his core, he's always been someone who bet on himself and won. Despite controversies, delays, and bold statements that sometimes rankle fans and colleagues alike, McFarlane has remained fiercely committed to his vision. He didn't just break the mold, he burned it down and made his own. This legacy was never handed to him. He drew it, he built it, and he never stopped hustling. And of course, you can find many of his stories in our eShop, comicsbugle.com. Your funny neighborhood comic book shop in Europe. Accept the great catalog of collected, deluxe, and absolute editions, epic collections, and omnibuses. We guarantee you eco-friendly Hulkproof packaging, free shipping in whole EU, an option to pre-order your comic book now and pay for it later. You can also split full price to 4 separate payments because we know how expensive these books can be. So check it out, comicsbugle.com. You can find direct links below this video. And that's all. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to smash the like and subscribe button so you don't miss out any further videos. In our comment section, let us know what other books or topics would you like to see in our videos. And see ya, Bugles!